This is the tale of fun. Sorry.
Wrong show. Welcome to Pandora's Box. That was Rooster by Alice in Chains, and we are Pandora's Box.
We're back, baby.
We are the box, and we're back for y'all.
We're opening that box of Pandora's goodness.
What's gonna be inside?
In the box today? I am your host as usual, Obadiah Pennywhistle, in the studio with the man with the golden nugget, Mr. Young Bullwinkle. He is the youngest Bullwinkle that has ever lived. On the left of me, we have Mr. Drupert the Bear.
What's up? Thank you for the claps. I enjoy it.
Hope that everyone listening has had a beautiful day and a beautiful week and is having a beautiful life. Thanks for joining us yet again. As always, we have a plethora of interesting facts, subjects, topics.
To all the friends of the pods out there.
To all the friends of the pods. Give yourselves a round of applause, everyone. Come on,
friends of the pods.
Last week, we talked about a first-hand account of when the Maori first met.
That was so good.
The British.
That was so good. That was one of my favourite moments of the pod, yeah.
Oh, well.
That was a really good story.
I think all around, everyone enjoyed it. So I found another one which is quite similar, which is when the British Navy first found what they referred to at the time as the Arctic Highlanders, which were basically like Eskimo in the South Eskimo in Greenland. So I think they'd already met some tribes in the north, but they'd never met any tribes in the south, and they didn't even think there were any there. So the guy that sort of like led this expedition was called John Ross, and he was a Scottish Royal Navy officer.
That's quite a cool name to call them, by the way.
What's
Arctic
that?
Highlanders.
I wonder if it was like, because it's, I don't know, like because he's Scottish, he was like saw some people and he was like, they're Highlanders. That's what I like. That's what I like to imagine in my head. Just because he was Scottish, he was like, oh, they must be Highlanders. But so he was a really cool, badass Scottish Royal Navy officer. But he was also one of the greatest polar explorers. So he was tasked with, this was the time, obviously, of the British, but also like a lot of the European world, also the Portuguese and the French and the Spanish, the Dutch were trying to explore the whole world basically and find out about it, and they were trying to document everything as they went. So this is another first-hand account of when John Ross first met these Greenlanders.
I got a picture of John Ross up there.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so regardless of if you're listening on the radio, remember we do have a YouTube Pandora's Box podcast on YouTube. Probably the best way to listen/watch, because then you can take in all the pictures and stuff. As I said, Drupert's got a picture up of John Ross, so if you want to take him in all of his splendour.
It's like a picture book.
Yeah, exactly. Any topics that we talk about, you can see pictures of them and stuff. Just makes it a little bit more immersive. Makes it a bit better, really, doesn't it? It's like
I like the YouTube episodes.
Yeah, I think it's better. You feel like I just think you feel it is just more immersive, and you feel more of a part of the episode. Gauge our reactions and stuff like that.
Exactly.
It's like you're here with us.
Yeah, the fourth member.
It's like you're there. Yeah,
of
exactly.
Pandora's Box.
Friend of the pod. Of the pod. So this is John Ross's. So this is from the diary of John Ross, by the way. This whole account is from the diary of John Ross. The origin of the Arctic Highlanders, or inhabitants of Prince Regent's Bay, is a question as yet involved in peculiar obscurity. They exist in a corner of the world by far the most secluded which has yet been discovered, and have no known knowledge of anything but what originates or is found in their own country. Nor have they any tradition how they came to this spot or from whence they came, having until the moment of our arrival, believing themselves to be the only inhabitants of our entire universe. Whoa. Which is in itself so cool. I think to the British by this point in history. So this was like about not even 300 years ago. You know, this was about 200. So John Ross was born in West Galway, Scotland, on the 24th of June, 1777. So if you want to say this is probably around, you know, let's just say it was like somewhere around 1800. You know, this was only like 220 years ago.
Yeah.
And up until this point, these tribes, these Eskimos, thought that they were the only inhabitants in the universe
for the whole time they'd been around.
They'd never even met anybody else before. They thought they were the only beings in the universe.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this from the perspective of the tribesmen?
No, this is John Ross.
This is John Ross. That's what I thought.
This is his diary.
I
was going to say that as well. It's pretty cool because last week it was the
from the
perspective
Maori.
of the Maori,
yeah.
and this time it's more from like the Western or like
yes,
the, you know,
very cool, very cool. Yeah, definitely. No, I thought that was interesting as well. The Eskimo believed that the whole world was just a mass of ice. Because I guess for all they could see, as far as the eye could see,
as far as they could travel,
was just snow and ice.
Yeah.
So they figured that the whole of the world was like that. You know, they had no
wouldn't you?
They had no concept of like the lush green fields and hills of England, or like the dense like jungles of the Amazon, or the plains of Africa,
or the Sahara Desert.
They just knew that ice, baby.
Crazy,
ice, baby.
Isn't it? It is generally believed by the natives of South Greenland that they are themselves descended from a nation in the north, and that the moment they were discovered, Satchus exclaimed, "These are right Eskimo. These are our fathers." This supposition is confirmed by a tradition in Igades, Greenland, where a story is related, as believed by every Eskimo, that a party of savages, having come from the north to the establishments at Woman's Islands, murdered the Eskimo stationed there, the accounts of which have reached their friends in the south. A party went against them and destroyed them in return. The similarity of the language proves that they are the same people, and it appears most probable that South Greenland has been peopled from the north, and that the northern parts of Baffin's Bay have been, in the same manner, originally peopled from the native tribes of America. So that's quite cool. So they think, originally that the Eskimo would have originally, a very, very long time ago, probably been the same, you know, like people as like the Native Americans.
Oh, okay.
In America, but obviously travelled very, very far north and eventually ended up being completely shut off and split off from like the warm, you know, from like the United States and stuff like that.
Imagine wanting to like travel there. Like,
well, I guess they just did.
Yeah, and then got cut off and thought, this is
you know, that's, and then before you know it, it's all you know.
Oh, we've done it now.
Has that been confirmed since? That they were like part of the same?
I want to say that I think so. I'm not 100% sure, but I think so. And I think if you even look at them, you can almost like tell like they look the most, they look similar, you know?
Right.
Where was I? Yes. It has long been ascertained that the land discovered by Davis on the west side of the Davis Strait was inhabited, and where we landed on the west side in latitude 70 degrees, there were evident marks of its recent occupation. The only parts where it appeared to be uninhabitable were between the Whale Sound and Lancaster Sound, a place, no doubt, of very considerable extent, but which, with a sledge on the ice, would be only 3 days' journey. Their having no knowledge of canoes is easily accounted for by their total want of wood, and the very short time that canoes could be used in their seas. The dress of the Arctic Highlanders consists of 3 pieces, which are all comprised in the name of tunic. The upper one is made of sealskin, with the hair on the outside, and is similar to the woman's jacket of the South Greenlander, being open only near the top, so as to equal the size of the wearer's face. At the bottom, it is formed like a shirt, but terminating in a tongue before and behind, the hood part being neatly trimmed with fox's skin, and made to fall back on the shoulders, or cover the head, as required. This is lined, in general, with eider duck, or auk skins, and this lining being close at the bottom and open near the breast, serves as a pocket. The next piece of dress, which scarcely reached the knee, is also uncomfortably small in the upper part, so that, in stooping, the skin is exposed. This is made of either bear or dog skin, and is fastened up with a string. The boots are made of sealskin, with the hair inwards. The soles being covered with seahorse hide. They reach over the knees and meet the middle part of the dress. The whole of these are made by the women, the needles used being of ivory, and the thread is of the sinews of the seal. The seams are so neat that they can scarcely be distinguished. They informed us that in the winter, or as the weather gets colder, they had a garment of bear skins, which they would then put on as a cloak. But this we did not see, nor were we able to persuade them to spare any part of their dress. The Arctic Highlanders are of a dirty copper colour. Their stature is only about 5 feet, their bodies corpulent, and their features much resembling the Eskimo of South Greenland. The following depiction of Ervik, of whom so much has already been said, and whose portrait is given at full length, and of his nephews, Marshuk and Utanaya, will give a just idea of the whole tribe of these people. This man, who appeared to be about 40 years of age, measured 5 feet 1 inch in height, his skin being of a dirty copper colour, a bit darker than the generality. His face was broad, his forehead narrow and low, with some wrinkles, and the nose small and straight. His cheeks were full, round and ruddy, even through the oil and dirt which covered them. His mouth was large, generally half open, and showing that he had lost his 4 teeth, the remainder of which were, however, quite white and regular. His lips were thick, particularly towards the middle. His eyes were small, black and oval, and very approximate. His hair was black, coarse, and long, and had certainly never been cut or combed. His beard and it's so funny. I don't know why he says mustachios, but it literally says his beard and mustachios. Like in his like really like formal diary, it's like his beard and mustachios. That must have been like a formal way of just saying mustache back in the day. But I never knew that. It sounds obviously a bit Spanish or something. His beard and mustachios, which were suffered to grow, were scanty and confined to the upper lip and chin. His body was fleshy, inclining to corpulence. The hands thick and small, his fingers were short, and the feet very short, but also very thick. Though good humour was fully expressed in his countenance, it also bore that indescribable mixed appearance of ignorance and wildness that characterises all of these uncivilised people. In walking, he seemed inactive, and it was with much difficulty he got up the ship's side. That's almost like interesting in a way, because they were essentially living like hunter-gatherer lifestyles. But to this John Ross, it's weird that they seemed almost like a bit inactive. Like the guy struggled to get up the ship, whereas I guess maybe it's just one of those things, isn't it? I mean, I talk about it quite often in terms of like training and that. I think a lot of people that have don't exercise or don't train, they assume that like if you're fit, you're fit. Whereas actually like fitness is very specific. Yeah, you can be like an Olympic gold medalist shot putter. That doesn't mean that you could run a marathon or cycle the Tour de France.
And also as well, like in those areas where it's like really, really, really cold, I can imagine like you want to conserve your energy quite a bit, like, and almost like get stocked up on fatty kind of meats and foods and stuff. And yeah, I can imagine they'd be quite slow and like...
It sounds as well like they've like almost like started to evolve because they live in such a cold area. The way he's describing them, they're like very short and thick and stocky. And if you think that makes sense, because like when you live in a really, really cold climate, you don't want like if you're like really long and lanky, that's almost like almost like a brittle branch.
Bring in like
so you're like probably quite stocky, almost like a dwarf in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Like a seal.
Yeah, like a
dwarf / seal.
Like a dwarf seal. Yeah. Like between Gimli and a seal. Where was I? Marshwick, who was with him, appeared to be about 23 years of age. Very specific. He appeared to be about 23 years of age. I mean, not 25 or 20. 23.
23 years and 5 days.
That's what John Ross went with. He was not so dark as his uncle. His features were so pleasing that he got the name of the handsome native. He was not so corpulent as the rest, but in every other respect, his appearance was the same. Utanaya was about 21 years of age. Again, very specific. His features were much freckled. I think that's quite interesting, because you would normally think, like, say, they were saying in terms of DNA, they thought they were most like the Native American tribes of say, like North America. Those people obviously have a naturally sort of very tanned, dark complexion. What this is also another evidence of, in my opinion, is that they're starting to evolve. Like, like I have freckles, and I know that freckles are basically a genetic mutation that happens when there's not enough melatonin in your skin, and that's caused by vitamin D deficiency, which is basically when you're spending, your lineage, your ancestors spent hundreds, if not thousands, of years in a climate with not enough sun, and as a result, you get freckles. Like freckles is like a genetic mutation.
Yeah.
The same thing with eyes other than the color brown.
Yeah.
Obviously, humans would have all originally had brown eyes. It's because
Really?
And hair.
and blonde hair, or like hair that's anything other than like black or brown. So it's a genetic mutation which is basically caused by spending people spending hundreds, if not thousands, of years in climates where there's not enough sunlight, and that's obviously the same with literally the Caucasian race. I don't know, we would have originally all been of black skin, like black coloured, and then we went white, and then an even further thing is freckles.
I've got so many freckles as well,
mate. I'm covered in them. Look.
Me too,
I'm absolutely
man.
covered in them.
Me
Man.
too.
I don't think I've got too many, but then I've got blue eyes and blonde hair, so maybe it makes up for it somewhere else.
Yeah, you're a bit like your brother. Like Zeus was the same. Josh hasn't got any freckles, but he's also pale and blue eyes, isn't he? Josh has got almost like a ring of yellow around his iris, which I always find quite fascinating. I don't know if I've known anyone else that's got yellow in their eye. He's like yellow and then blue. It's really quite interesting. He's a fine example, that lad. Where was I? Oh yeah, Utanaya. Utanaya was about 21 years of age. His features were much freckled, and we recognised a likeness between him and a Greenlander we had seen in N.E. Bay. Both these, who were brothers, had white regular teeth and were 5 feet high. The man who stole the hammer was by much the tallest, being 5 feet 6 inches and a half. His skin was not so dark as Ervik's. The nose was large and aquiline, the forehead very narrow, and the lower part of his face broad. His body was muscular. His features seemed savage and dishonest. He had less beard than the rest, but was in other respects the same. The greatest number of natives seen was about 18 years of age. Many attempts were made to discover the numbers of the tribe, but without success, as they could reckon no further than 5, and could therefore only say plenty of people. It's interesting. I bet it puts into perspective like how hard it would have been. Well, I think with some cultures it would have been easier than others, but with some people,
communicate.
Yeah, with some people it must have nearly been impossible because, as I said, if
I don't know how they were communicating with these guys.
But it's like, but it's not even just the language. It's like if you have no concept of almost like numbers the way we do, like we would say, how many people are in this room? 53. Well, like if you've never even conceived maths in an accurate way like that, then and you're like accustomed to say your people might have a rule that like if it's more than 2, you would just always say plenty.
Yeah.
And then the people that say like more specific, you're like, what do you mean? What does that mean to be more specific? I've already said there's plenty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? They could only say plenty people, pointing to the north. And it must be recollected that this was only a part detached from the main body. So yeah, John Ross came to the conclusion that this was basically a small party and that there was a larger tribe to the north. Ervik, being the senior of the first party that came on board, was judged to be the most proper person to question on the subject of religion. I directed Sakius to ask him if he had any knowledge of a supreme being. But after trying every word used in his own language to express it, he could not make him understand what it meant. It was distinctly ascertained that he did not worship either the sun, moon, stars, or any image or any living creature. When asked what the sun or moon was, he said, to give light. He had no knowledge or idea.
Nice and simple.
Yeah. I like it. Seems like the Eskimos are like very simple people.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't even bother like trying to think of their existence. To them, it's like what their life is. That is it.
Yeah.
The world is ice.
Light.
They hunt. That's for light.
Notice how they wouldn't even know that it's for heat as well because they'd have been in the snow for so long.
Oh, I guess that's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. He had no knowledge or idea of how it came into being, or of any future state, but said that when he died, he would simply be put into the ground. Having fully ascertained that he had no idea of a supreme being, I proceeded through Satius. So I'm assuming that Satius is a much more native person, but obviously not of this tribe. So somebody that lived in the northern Arctic regions that probably had
an idea of what to say.
had a language similar enough that they could communicate, but obviously far enough away that they'd never met these people before, but also had enough contact with, obviously, I guess, British or European people that he now understood the English language. So he's like their just translator. Where was I? I proceeded through Syracuse to inquire if he believed in an evil spirit, but he could not be made to understand at all what this meant. The word Angakok, which means a conjurer or sorcerer, was then pronounced to him in the South Greenland Eskimo language. He said they had many of them, that it was in their power to raise a storm or make a calm and to drive off seals or bring them to them, that they learned this art from old Angagoks when young, that the people were afraid of them, but they had generally one in every family. So that's cool. So this goes to show that they did almost like have their own thing of like shamans in each family, right? Where I guess they would almost be like trained from birth to try and bring like good luck and things like that upon the tribe. Right. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Mezjak gave precisely the same answers and had the same notions, but he was not so intelligent as Ervik. Finding that Utanaya, the nephew of Ervik, had a lad of 18 years of age, was a young Angagok. I got him in the cabin by himself, and through Syracuse asked him how he learnt this art. He replied, from an old Angagok, that he could raise the wind and drive off seals and birds. He said that this was done by gestures and words, but that the words had no meaning, nor were they said or addressed to anything other than the wind or the sea. He was positive that in this incantation he did not receive assistance from any being, nor could he be made to understand what either a good or an evil spirit meant. When Ervik was told that there was an omnipotent and omnipresent being who had created the sea, the land, and all therein, he shoots with much surprise and eagerly asked where he lived. Yeah, we've got to bear in mind that at this stage in history, anyone in Britain would have been very, on the whole, very Christian. And if you probably weren't religious or denounced God, you would have probably been seen as a heretic. Still.
Or pretended to.
yeah. In like the 1800s, you would have still been seen as like a heretic if you didn't believe in God. So the British people at the time very much believed that God created everything. So this is they're like taking this as fact in their head to the Eskimo people. And it's just weird that the Eskimos are just finding this like a weird fact. I think it's hilarious that when they're like they're told this, he shrewd much surprise and eagerly asked where he lived. It's like so funny. Like there's just like some cabin somewhere with just God sat down. Yeah. When told that he was everywhere, he showed much alarm and became very impatient to be on the deck. When told that there was a future state and another world, by this I think I mean heaven.
Right.
He said that a wise man who had lived long before their time had said that they were to go to the moon, but that is not now what they believed, and that none of the others knew anything of this history. They believed, however, that birds and other living creatures came from the moon. So that's quite interesting. So it's almost like implying that although they don't have a religion now, it seems that in their culture they have knowledge that their ancestors used to believe that there was a wise man that had lived on the moon, but it's not believed anymore. But that they believe that all birds and living creatures come from the moon. It's an interesting thing to believe, isn't it? Like, why would you believe that all creatures come from the moon? I quite like it though.
Would you believe they put a man on the moon?
Would you believe they put a man on the moon? Although there is certainly no proof whatever that this people have any idea of a supreme being or of a spirit, either good or evil, the circumstances of them having conjurers and of them going to the moon after death are of a nature to prevent any conclusion from being drawn to that effect, especially as it must be evident that our knowledge of their language was too imperfect to obtain the whole of their ideas on this subject. We had not an opportunity of visiting the inhabitants of the Arctic Highlanders, nor did we see them, but at too great a distance to form a judgment either of their construction or comforts. But from the description given by the natives, they appear to be situated always near the sea. Near the sea. On a spot least liable to be overwhelmed by snow. Smart. These houses are built entirely of stone, the walls being sunk about 3 feet into the earth and raised to about 3 feet above. The roof is in the form of an arch, and such holes as would admit air are filled up with mud. They have no windows. The entrance is by a long, narrow and nearly underground passage. The floor is covered with skins, on which they sit or sleep. Several families living in one house, and each family has a lamp made of hollowed stone, which is suspended from the roof, and in which they burn the oil, or rather the blubber, of seals and sea unicorns.
Sea unicorns.
Whoa.
I guess they maybe mean narwhals.
Yeah.
You know, narwhals are those
narwhals.
that have those big,
Yeah.
and they're quite beautiful looking things, aren't they? Like spirally and everything. I guess that must be what they mean. Interesting, again though, a bit like with the mustachios thing. This is like a really well written, very extremely literate and formal piece of literature.
Yeah.
And yet it's like mustachios, sea unicorns. So they make these lanterns with they burn them with oil or other blubber from seals or sea unicorns, using dried moss for a wick. Fire is produced from iron and stone. This lamp, which is never extinguished, serves for light and warmth, and at the same time for cooking. And we ascertained that they had a method both of boiling and roasting, or scorching, their meat. That's quite cool. So basically the same thing that we do now. Scorching, I guess, means the same as like frying. So they would boil, roast and fry their meat. Which occupation falls entirely on the women. They eat all kinds of animal food, but the seal and the sea unicorn are preferred. Let's have a look. So we do have a description actually here of what it says the sea unicorn is. The sea unicorn, oh yes, it is a narwhal. Yeah. Narwhal, or also was sometimes referred to at the time as unicorn fish. Grow to about 22 feet long. They have no mouth.
Nice lot of meat.
Yeah, definitely. Nice big animal. Yeah, the seal and the sea unicorn are preferred for food sources, as being more oily and agreeable to their palates.
I wonder if they'd have like many like vegetable kind of things out there, or they'd be like
think so.
totally.
There are some types there are like snowberries, for example, that specifically only grow in frozen climates, but
you would imagine it's quite hard to grow stuff out there.
Yeah,
it?
that's what I mean. Like,
not
for them to
habitable.
survive.
I think that like 95% at least of their diet would be like meat, bone marrow, or internal organs, you know, things like that.
Must have been very bad when they like couldn't, like, or maybe, you know, they might have gone out for one day and like not been able to hunt anything, which means the whole village.
I guess the thing is they would have become masters at hunting.
Yeah,
and if it's that cold as well, like you could keep it fresh pretty easily compared to
true.
True. So they could get one of these 20-foot
narwhals,
and
that
then,
would feed a whole community.
Keep it all,
Yeah,
you know,
they'd
cured or whatever.
They could probably just leave it out in the settlement.
Yeah.
You know, pretty cool. I thought I was going to sneeze. I'm going to sneeze.
Oh, bless you, laddie. Oh, bless you again. Oh, bless you again. Oh. Triple whammy.
Oh, you can tell it's in the hotter months now.
Multiple sneeze-gasms.
Oh, sneeze-gasms everywhere. Oh, this is a bit weird. But then again, well, I say weird, not really, because I guess as we were just pointing out, you know, it's not exactly like food is abundant there. Although that seals and narwhals were their favourite food, dogs were also esteemed as excellent food to them, and were even bred as livestock. It seems funny because we think of like breeding like cows and stuff like that, but to think that you would just breed dogs like for food and almost like have little pens the same way that we have like fields of cows. They were also bred to draw the sledge. Right there, Bullwinkle?
Yeah, I nearly dropped my bottle.
Yeah, they were also used to draw the sledge, but they are only eaten during the winter in times when no other food can be obtained. Okay, so there you go. So it seems like they would hunt, preferably things like seals and narwhals, and I assume they probably fished as well. But then when food got very scarce, they basically farmed dogs, which they would normally use to pull sledges, but in times of hardship would then eat. The men catch the seals either when the seals are asleep or by lying down near the holes in the ice and making a great noise, which often brings seals to the surface. When the animal appears, they imitate his cry or grunt, and by this means induce him to come onto the ice and approach them. When within reach, they strike the seal on the nose with a spear made of the sea unicorn's horn. Oh, so they stab it through the face with a narwhal horn.
Beak.
That's quite cool.
That's pretty savage, isn't it? And this will soon dispatch it. The sea unicorn is taken by harpoon, the barbed part of which is about 3 inches long, having a line attached to it of about 5 fathoms in length. That's an old measurement, isn't it?
Oh.
5 fathoms. I don't even know how long a fathom is. Can we find out how long a fathom is, please, lads? Fathoms, isn't it? The other end of which is fastened to a buoy of sealskin made into a bag and then inflated. The blade is fixed on the end of the shaft in such a manner that it may be disengaged from the handle after it is fixed to the animal, and the shaft is then pulled back by a line which is tied to it for the purpose. Have you found out how long a fathom is?
Yeah, it's 1.8 metres.
1.8 metres. Okay, interesting.
So 5,000.
I wonder why we even got rid of that measurement. Do you know what I mean?
I thought a fathom was something like, I can't fathom that.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's quite common for words to have several meanings.
Yeah,
isn't
true.
it? My mind I wonder if it's linked. My mind cannot fathom that. Do you know what I mean? I wonder if it's like, why? I wonder if that saying came somehow from the measurement.
My mind cannot go that far.
No. I can't figure it out on the spot. I mean, somebody might be able to. Or I'm sure you could look it up. But anyway, that once this happens, the animal immediately plunges. So the narwhal will plunge once the blade is penetrated its hide, and it will carry down with him the sealskin buoy, which will then fatigue him. So essentially, they make like a big ball of air, sounds like. That obviously, imagine how tiring that would be to try and dive deep, and then it would just keep pulling you to the surface.
Yeah.
So this will fatigue the narwhal, as he must come up in some pool to respire. So obviously you've got to bear in mind as well that narwhals do breathe oxygen the same as us, the same as dolphins or any other whale, so they will have to come and surface. As he must come up in some pool to respire, like the black whale, he is followed and dispatched then with spears. As this animal frequents the chasms and pools in the ice, he falls easy prey to the natives. We could not learn the precise manner in which they kill the bears. Oh, okay, so they kill bears. That's pretty savage, because these were doing polar bears as well. Polar bears are massive. I bet a lot of Eskimos got eaten by polar bears in those days.
Yeah.
I think if a polar bear just came into... I imagine they learnt to make their houses in a way that polar bears couldn't get into.
Yeah, they said it was stone, didn't they?
Yeah, it sounds like 3 feet buried deep in that.
Yeah.
So even like a big old polar... And it sounded like they said that their entrances were almost like semi-underground.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you'd almost have to like lie down and like get into it like that. Almost like a little tunnel. So I'm assuming that their houses were impervious to polar bear attacks, but even so, things with polar bears as well, they're like basically they've evolved like invisible in the ice.
Yes.
So
yeah, they're beasts.
So
Can I just tell you something as well? That's pretty interesting about the fathom.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the fathom originated as the distance from the middle fingertip of one hand to the middle fingertip of another hand of a large man holding his arms fully outstretched. So like that.
Oh, okay.
Fingertip to fingertip.
Okay, that's a fathom.
The name comes from the Old English fadem or fathem, meaning outstretched arms. So that's how they got their like measurement of it.
Do you know what I reckon? Do you know what I reckon that my mind cannot fathom that means then?
What?
I reckon it means that like my mind cannot hold that, and as a result, my mind cannot grasp that. That's what I think it means.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you had your arms outstretched,
that makes
you would
sense
hold
to me.
or grasp something. That's what I reckon it means. Where were we? We were talking about the bears. We could not learn the precise manner in which they kill bears, but they informed us that they attacked them in the water. The foxes and hares are taken in traps made of stones, resembling a small grotto, and having a narrow entrance, which is closed by a stone that falls down when the animals enter to take the bait left within. The natives described to us an animal which they call the hummernick, but said it was too large for them to kill. It has, by their account, a horn on its back and is very swift. I therefore suppose it must be a reindeer. No, can't be. That just seems like too... Like, I know reindeers are big, but if they kill bears and they kill narwhals...
Like a moose? A moose might make more sense.
I'm not sure if moose grow. I know that there are obviously moose in Canada. I don't know if there are moose in Greenland. I don't think there are. I might be wrong in that. I'm no expert on Greenland, but I've never heard of moose being there. But I think that's almost like a bit creepy. That's almost like a case of like Eskimo cryptozoology.
Yeah.
They said that there's an animal called the humminich that is too large for them to kill, and by has their account a horn on its back and is very swift.
Whoa,
Weird. Anyway,
what that is?
A giant, weird, horny beast.
Yeah.
They also have an animal known to both countries by the name of Ankorok, but which I cannot find to be mentioned by the writers of Greenland. Sakius says it is not uncommon about the Northeast Bay and Disco Bay, where its cry is continually heard at night. Do you want to do an impression of the cry? There we go, nice one, bro. I was imagining more like...
Yeah.
But anyway, it could be... It's purely imagination.
Yeah.
Purely imagination. Do you want to do your version? That's freaky. I hope it's not that one.
Inward cry.
The inward cry. Yeah, that's a beast. That's the Ankorok has the inward cry. The notorious inward cry. Where were we? Yeah, its cries can continually be heard at night. It is very wild and can seldom be approached, being very active and very fierce. The Eskimo are afraid of it. He says it resembles a cat, but is 3 times larger, and it moves by jumping more than by running.
So what's that, like a panther sort of thing?
Yeah, there's no
wolf.
There's no cats that live in Greenland or anything like that, man.
Right.
Yeah, I think this is another case of cryptozoology. It's an animal that looks like a cat, but it's 3 times larger, but only gets around by jumping and makes weird noises all night, crying out into the night. Like that's not. Yeah. Yes.
Maybe it's a wolf.
Yeah, you're probably right. But they don't. But yet again, they don't jump around, do they? They're like dogs.
Could do. I feel
What,
like dogs do
just
jump
like-
around.
And if they
no,
do-
not on
hopping
2
around.
legs.
If they did rear dogs, I can imagine they'd be quite wolf-like dogs in that region, or like husky kind
Yeah,
of.
but I was
Yeah.
going to say, yeah,
They'd know that.
They
They'd say
breed.
it's like a wolf.
As you said, their dogs in that region were very much like huskies, which basically look like
Like
wolves.
wolves,
So they would have
yeah.
basically said something like, like big dogs or something like that.
No, not cats. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Weird.
Very strange.
I
Very
remember
strange.
seeing a video of a like black panther chasing someone, and it was like, and like jumping at him the whole time. So that's the first thing that
when
springs
it's
to
super
mind.
close. But I mean, they don't move around by
No,
jumping.
You get like
true,
snow
true,
leopards and stuff, don't you? In really cold places.
You do. Yeah, you do. I think that's more in like the Himalayas and stuff like that, though. I don't think there's any in the northern Arctic or anything like that. Anyway, we're going to listen to a track now. When we come back, we're going to carry on listening to this this interesting tale of when John Ross, an officer in the British Admiralty, first met the Eskimo. Welcome back, everybody. You're listening to Pandora's Box, and we had a nice little chill-out session there, listening to some tracks. The last one was Risability by Idlewild. Before that, we had Rays of Pinion by Baroness. Before that, we had Seagull by Bad Company. And before that one, Not If You Were the Last Junkie on Earth by the Dandy Warhols. You're listening to Pand. I know, it's absolutely bleeding wonderful, isn't it?
Petty, you're back.
Oh, of course, I'm back. No, I'm Jerry.
You're Jerry.
You're Petty.
I'm Petty.
No, we're their nephews, Ron and Don.
London.
But yeah, before those tracks, which I hope everyone enjoyed.
Eskimos.
We were talking about Eskimos.
Yeah.
The account of John Ross, the British Royal Navy officer who met the Eskimo, a tribe of Eskimo that had never been encountered before, in lands that people just thought just had nobody living there. And where we got to before we had a little break and listened to those tracks was the Eskimo talking about a large creature that apparently resembled a cat but was 3 times larger, that moves by jumping more than running and lives in holes and caverns in the rocks. So let's get back into it. This is some more of the description of this beast. It eats hares and partridges, which it lies in waits for, and catches by springing on them. This does sound very cat-like, doesn't it? I have to say. But then I said, we didn't. As far as I know, there's no sort of cat-like creature that lives in that region. The hares seen by our people were white and are described in the appendix. The foxes were generally black. That's strange as well, because I'm thinking of Arctic foxes, which are white. Very strange. The foxes were generally black, but they were also seen both of a white and of the common colour, which they have been seen as in southern countries. So like red as well.
Right.
I've never ever seen. I didn't know that there were like black foxes. I know that Arctic foxes that basically look very similar to our foxes, but are white. The same way that like bears look very similar to brown bears, but are white. Like everything in the Arctic just seems to get white because it's like makes sense, I guess. But very interesting. Unless they were just talking rubbish.
Arctic fox, black, yeah.
Oh, you can see there's some pictures of black Arctic foxes. Can you?
Yeah.
See, I didn't know that. I thought they were only white.
I said
there
Greenland, as well.
Oh, okay.
I like foxes.
You find out something every day, don't you? Yeah, I like foxes as well. Where were we? Unfortunately, none of them were taken, and therefore they cannot be particularly described. The dogs of which are the only animals that have been domesticated by the Arctic Highlanders are of various colours, but chiefly resembling that given in the plate. They are of the size of a shepherd's dog. I guess like a German shepherd or something. No, probably about a collie as well, like things like that. They have a head like a wolf and a tail like a fox. Yeah, something like a husky or like a was it called a Mameluke? Is it? Is it Mameluke?
Mameluke.
Mamelukes?
I've not even heard of that one, man.
So Mamelukes are very similar to huskies. I think it's Mameluke, like Mamaluke. I think that's how you spell it. I'm not 100% sure. So, it will be something like that.
Hey, Mameluke.
Mameluke dog. Can you have a look at that? Mameluke dog.
Mameluke
dog.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, yeah.
I think they're like huskies, but a bit bigger.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's just loading. I know them. They look like huskies.
They're either like huskies, but a bit bigger, or they're like huskies, but a bit smaller. I can't remember. But either way.
Could go either way by these pictures.
Yeah.
They're not standing next to a husky, but yeah, they've got quite big faces as well.
Yeah. Nice looking dogs, though, aren't they?
Mm.
Apparently they're very vocal. Their dogs are the size of a shepherd's dog. They have a head like a wolf and a tail like a fox. Their bark resembles the latter, but they also have a howler like the former. Okay, so they have a howl like a wolf and a bark like a fox. Interesting. Like that maybe was like jump then. I was like, whoa. It's like so shrill.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. Just, when you're compulsed to do these things, it's fair enough, isn't it? Sometimes you just need to be driven by your compulsion. An Arctic Highlander never hunts or travels to any distance but on his sledge, and he always carries with him his spear and a knife. From the rapidity with which they seem to drive, it may be fairly conjectured they could travel 50 or 60 miles a day, which indeed is known to have been done by the natives of South Greenland. The habits of this people appear to be filthy in the extreme. Their faces, hands and bodies are covered with both oil and dirt, and they look as if they have never washed themselves since the day they were born. Their hair was matted with filth, yet they seemed very tenacious of it, for when a small piece was cut off from one of the heads of the Majak's sons, both he and his father were much displeased. And to be fair, they should have asked or gestured. Just go up to him.
I will cut your
hair.
Can you imagine
how triggered you'd be? I would be annoyed as well, even if my hair was a bit greasy that day. And shewed great uneasiness until the hair was returned to them, when it was carefully wrapped in a piece of sealskin and then put by the former into his pocket. That's almost like a bit of a weird account, isn't it? Like, give me back my hair, and then just wrap it up and just put it in your pocket, all angry about it. That's quite funny.
It's weird that people just never used to wash really in these tribes.
Well, it depends. Yeah, I was going to say it depends where in the world. So I think you see lots of different extremes. So this Scot, John Ross, obviously thought these people looked very dirty. I know that at the time, in places like Egypt, they thought the French and the British didn't wash enough. They used to think because it was quite a strict Islamic culture. One thing about sort of that way of life is they have very strict rules about stuff. So it's you should wash and groom very regularly. Things like sexual diseases are very frowned upon in Islamic countries. They could not believe that you could go to somewhere they really respected France and Britain in terms of the might, in terms of the days of Napoleon and the days of Nelson and Lord Wellington and stuff like that. They really respected the might of the powers, because at the time, France and Britain were two of the most powerful, if not the most powerful countries on the planet. But they couldn't believe that you could go to Paris this like amazing place, and that there would just be like a woman on the street with their boobs out. They found it like detestable, and they found it really disgusting as well that not all women shaved. So in like Egypt, it was like custom, all these like women would like shave every hair off their body, and I think even a lot of men would, maybe apart from like beards and stuff like that. But they could not believe that you could just go to like France and you could just go into like what was considered like a respectable bar, and there might just be like a woman in there with like her boobs out and like hairy armpits. And they just thought it was like gross. Or the thought that you could like go to like a parlour, have sex with a woman you'd never met before, and then potentially get like smallpox or something. They thought that was like disgusting. Which, to be fair,
it's pretty disgusting.
But I guess like as we're saying, it's all relative. So like so obviously by like it would have been pretty similar standard in Britain to how I just described in like somewhere like Paris. And then, like you could, if you were like some drunken lad in Manchester, you could find some lass that you could give a couple of shillings and she'd give you a good night. But then God knows what she's got. This is pre-contraception by a long way.
Crazy.
And if this young lady, we want washing much, you don't have contraception. There's not, medicine as good as today for things like chlamydia, things like smallpox, all the other STDs that you can think of. Then God knows what you'd have. I expect it was fairly common in those days for like French and British and Dutch and such on like Germans and stuff to have like several STDs at a time, and I suppose you just lived with it.
It's horrible, isn't it?
But even to these people, these Eskimos seemed really dirty, because at least like I guess in Britain and France you would at least wash sometimes. I don't think it was like today where it's like almost like every day.
Yeah,
but you would at least like it's probably like
once
more
a week.
Yeah,
I always read about the bath as well. So like the man would get the bath first, and then the woman would get it, and then the kids would get it, and then the baby would get it.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
So like they just.
I feel sorry for the
bath.
baby.
Yeah, it's just disgusting, isn't it? It's like you're washing in dirt.
I think the children should get it first, and then the mum, and then the dad.
It was always the dad, then the mum, then the kids, then the baby.
I think that you should almost go in order of like whoever's probably going to be most dirty should go last.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because that just makes common sense to me. Like I know that in my household I would be the one, especially because I usually wash like straight after I work out. I don't like somebody shouldn't have to bathe in my like sweaty water, like my sweaty ass crack water. Do you know what I mean? Like no reasonable person should like have to like put up with that. It's like let my baby do it first, and then the woman, and then I'll go. I'm quite happy with that. So but no, it's just interesting, isn't it? I think that probably would have been maybe, I don't know, like by this stage in history. I know that sort of in like Anglo-Saxon period it had been about once a week. I'm not so sure about this period, like 1800s. I think it would have probably been a bit more like common sense. So if like I don't know, in that regard, I guess it is a bit like that today. Although we would do wash much more in general. I think if you're stinky and you're dirty, you should have a wash. I reckon it's probably more like that. But I can imagine in those days, if you have like 4 or 5 days in a row where you're not doing anything overly strenuous and you're not building up too much of a sweat or like getting physically dirty in like a garden or environment, I can imagine they probably just wouldn't wash. Anyway, where were we? So they were a bit filthy. Their hair was... we were talking about the poor guy that was annoyed because his hair got cut off. We learned that each man took one wife when he was able to maintain a family. If she had children, he took no other, nor was she permitted to have another husband. But if otherwise, the man may take another wife. Okay, so that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Pretty crazy that that's a universal thing, like marriage.
Yeah,
like in humans,
but yeah, again,
that's always something that arises.
They would be more like companions or something. They probably wouldn't call it. Like,
again,
marriage
this seems a little bit more like chilled in terms of the way it says. Like, we learn that each man took one wife when he was able to maintain a family. If she had children, he took no other. Which immediately obviously says if she for some reason was barren, he could just by rights take another wife. If otherwise, the man may take another wife, and so on, a third. And so he could end up with like 3 wives until he has kids. And then it goes on to say the woman has the same privilege. So that's quite interesting as well. So if a man couldn't get a woman pregnant, she could just take on another husband.
Right.
So that's almost like quite relaxed. And I guess it's like common sense in terms of like you need to ensure the continuation of your species, don't you? And if you're not reproducing, well, then you're all going to go extinct, aren't you?
But otherwise, it was quite monogamous.
Yes. Ervik, and it goes on to say, Ervik, who was obviously, this is like the chief guy that they're speaking to, the one that seemed like he was about 40. Ervik spoke very affectionately of his wife. That's quite nice, isn't it? Who he said was a good one, because she had hit 6 of his sons. When they took or begged any fanciful thing, as a looking glass or picture, They all said it was for their wives. Okay, so that's nice. So every single Eskimo that took anything from the British sailors, they all said that they were taking these things to give to their wives, which is very nice. It shows that they had a lot of respect and love for their wives. They also show much respect to their mothers, for one of them said he would let me have his sledge, and another would have parted with his jacket, but his mother would be displeased. So he did not. The dress of the woman is, from what we can collect, the same as that of the men. We could not make out whether they lived to a great age or not, for the old people had been sent to the mountains, or concealed, very intriguing, or concealed upon our approach, and we never saw them, nor did we see any of the children. I asked both. I guess that doesn't make sense in a way. It's like if these people are meeting these aliens essentially for the first time, you have no idea if they're just going to try and kill you. Or like you hide the vulnerable, you hide the women, the children, the elderly, and you send the men.
It's cool that they didn't just attack the army, the navy. Sorry, like.
But they didn't attack the navy, or the navy didn't attack the Eskimos.
So the Eskimos didn't attack the navy as soon as like they came up. You know.
I think even to this day they come across as like quite like peaceful, chill people. Don't they? You see pictures of the Eskimo; they're usually just there with like chilling, like like a fishing rod and like the snow and like all their hides.
It's
and
cool because a lot of places, especially like tribal stuff, like in jungles and things like that, it's like that like the Thailand one where it's like
not very welcoming.
No, it's almost like
or like some of those Amazon
thing is
tribes.
Just attack. You know?
Yeah. It seemed like that with the Maori people as well. Like they were a bit more like chill. Like you know.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna gauge them if they start attacking us, and I'm sure we're gonna start attacking you. But until then, it's like well, as long as we're not attacking each other, it's cool. Yeah. And that one guy that did steal something, that thief among the Maori, and then it was just like, boom, just got shot by that British guy.
Yeah.
You know?
And then the other guys were like, okay,
just
fair
like
enough.
we shouldn't have stole from him. You know, pretty cool. Where was I? I asked both Ervik and Medjak if they would spare one of their sons. That's a bit of a weird thing to ask. To which they answered, they would not. Nor could either of them be tempted by any presents to consent to part with any of their children. Yeah, I should hope so.
Well, so they were trying to take their...
I guess they wanted
you meant
to...
for like an interview or something, but...
No, I think they wanted to literally like buy a kid off them so that they could take it back to like Europe and be like, look, we found this amazing people. But they were like, nah. Mate, if somebody like random, if I just like met some weird country, like foreigner from some country I'd never been to in my life, I didn't even know existed, and then they were just like, can I buy a kid off you? I'd be like, what are you on about?
It's so weird how like they could have thought about it like that back then. Like, what was that other thing you said? Like, someone tried to buy a kid that they could feed to cannibals.
That was the Jameson. Yeah, one of the heirs of the Jameson.
It's almost like you can under the like.
That would have been a similar time to this as well.
Yeah,
it would have been sometime. Yeah.
You can like buy life and stuff a little bit.
Yeah, they bought some poor young girl and then just to like take her to the, I think it was the Amazon or something.
And see
like
how they roasted.
You just wanted to document it.
Yeah,
that's so weird.
Mental.
So dark. Indeed, none of them were willing to leave their country either. So I guess they were like offered to come back, to be shown the rest of the world, or at least
an adventure.
But they were like, nah. They seemed most happy and contented where they were. Their clothing was in good condition and was very suitable for their climate, and by their account they had plenty of provisions. They all acknowledged Tuluwa as their king, and represented him as a strong man, as a very good man, and very much beloved. The name of his residence was Petawak, which they described to be near a large island, which could be no other than Wolstenholme Island. He had a large house built of stone, which they described to be nearly as large as the ship which the British had arrived on, that there were many houses near it, and that the mass of the natives lived there, that they paid him a portion of all the food they caught, and returned to this place whenever the sun went away, with fruits of their labours. They could not be made to understand what was meant by the word war, nor did they have any warlike weapons. That's quite nice, isn't it?
So they were peaceful people.
Super chill. Like they hunted, obviously. They had spears, but I guess it was like strictly for hunting animals, not.
Yeah.
I think as well, like if you live in such like a strenuous place, I guess you almost don't have time for war.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like you spending all your time like either making hides, making houses, because like if you don't make a house,
babies.
yeah, if you don't make a house by the time the sun goes down, like you're going to freeze to death in the night.
War benefits no one.
Yeah, exactly. You need to
Especially
be
in
a tight-knit community. You need to be working on the houses. You need to be hunting. You need to be making hides. You can't be affording just to be randomly hitting your head over the mate with a club and being like, whoa. So strange, isn't it, really? I gave strict and positive orders that no firearms or other warlike weapons should be shown to them at all, or given to them on any account. And when they were with us, all shooting parties were called in and hidden from them. That's so... I think that's so respectable about John Ross. And one thing I really like about both John Ross in this story and about the captain... We don't know the captain's name because it was purely from the Maoris' point of view. Yeah. But the captain from the last one was, I think, it comes across in a very good light. You know, I think that people always tend to shine a spotlight on the negative, or at least a lot of people do, and it's a real shame. And we almost make out that history is nothing but ugly. But in all of these accounts, like the fact that John Ross, as a responsible British officer, came across these people, realised they didn't even know what war was and had no warlike weapons, and as a result was almost like afraid that it could spread to them or the idea could be planted.
Yeah.
So he immediately made the order, hide every single weapon from them, and almost like call in any of the shooters that had been sent out, I don't know, whether to hunt or for whatever reason, and just like, you know, put all the weapons and stuff like below deck. I think that's so decent.
Yeah.
Makes him such a likable man. I think in most like movies nowadays, I understand that obviously movies need villains, but it's like whether you watch like something like Pirates of the Caribbean or whatever, it always like depicts
Assassin's
almost like
Creed.
yeah, it almost depicts almost like, you know, the British of the time to almost be like or any of the Europeans of the time, like the Spanish as well, and the French and the Portuguese and that, and the Dutch, of all being like these like evil villains that just went to lands, just killed everyone, and you know what I mean, and, like enslaved everybody. It's like it's not always obviously the case. They seem to have no diseases among them, nor could we learn that they died of any complaints peculiar to this or any other country. We saw no deformed or disabled persons among them, nor could we find out that there were any. We did not see any of the women or young children, but had we been able to remain, I have no doubt that they would have also visited us. Such is the substance of what we collect in our short intercourse with these fascinating people, which may appear in some points to be defective. But it must be recollected that the ships were always in motion, principally from the state of the weather, which rendered it impossible for us to send out parties on shore after the first day. We still had daily hopes of obtaining a more complete access to them, even to the last moment when we were obliged to leave this part of the coast, and in proceeding northward from our last station, had still the prospect of visiting their king and filling up the measure of information respecting them. These hopes were ultimately disappointed, as will appear by the events that will be related in the ensuing chapter. We don't have time to read the next chapter, unfortunately. But maybe we could do on another occasion.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But what a fascinating account. Yeah, again, I'm loving these. Like, I think there's something so cool. Almost like, to read out loud, literally an account of when two completely different civilizations first met, whether it was the one I read out last week with the Maori or this one with the Eskimo. It's absolutely fascinating to think that these cultures, whether it was the Maori, which are obviously in modern day New Zealand, they're obviously landlocked by New Zealand, which is relatively a small country, you know, especially compared to like something that's close to them like Australia. You know, you just have North Island and the South Island, and I think that they were probably pretty similar. Like, you know, just probably had their own mythology, didn't really probably just assume that the rest of the world was like theirs, or maybe didn't even assume anything, I don't know. And then just this whole entire just having it would literally like it would be like your life was turned on its head. Yeah. It would have probably been the closest thing that we could get to it today would probably be literally meeting aliens from space. Yeah. Because if you want to think of it in terms of like, there's like national to global, and then from that is like global to like universal. Yeah. But you know what I mean? But it would almost been like that would have been how crazy it was for them. It would literally be if you were like some tribe that had never developed guns, had no knowledge of the stars, like all this stuff, and then suddenly this massive Royal Navy ship comes. These guys get off with rifles, which they, you know, the Maori described as like thunderclaps, and then lightning would kill these creatures. Like it would be like a alien coming down with like laser beams.
Yeah, man.
Or something. Do you know what I mean? It's like so mad.
It's exciting as well because it's just like we're such a inquisitive creature as a human, you know, and just going out, and it can be like in those accounts, it can be pleasant and it can be amicable and
definitely.
And rather than just cutthroat and
I think it always goes wrong. It's a slippery slope. All it needs is a couple of bad encounters, and then things can start heading south. But even with that thief, that Maori thief, do you know what I mean? The British didn't take it further. No. They shot that one thief. Like, how dare you steal from us? Like, we're the British Empire. Like, don't steal. But then it's like, they killed that one guy. They were cool with the rest of them. I mean, unfortunately, I think sometimes things like that happen too much. Like, the Maori were obviously very wise. And then they obviously basically, like, called a debate about it, didn't they? And then they were like, I guess there probably were some people there, especially, like, young, hot-headed Maori that probably wanted to go and attack the British. But the wise men of the tribe knew, like, no, look, he brought this upon himself. He suffered the consequences of his actions. He stole it. Let him have that thing he stole, but now he's going to have to suffer the consequences that he's now dead.
Lay on the ground with that which he stole.
We're not going to avenge a bad act because that makes us seem immoral.
Yeah.
We're just going to carry on as normal. The British luckily didn't tar them with the same brush, paint them with the same brush. And everything seemed cool again.
It seems like it's like right or wrong is something that can be established in any people, just naturally, which is really good as well, because it's like, you're naturally going to be quite friendly if the other one's friendly,
Oh, 100%.
Even if you can't speak the same language, you haven't got the same customs, it's just a human trait, which is like really cool.
Yeah, that's really nice to see, isn't it? It's like there are certain things which are universal. Like, you don't always have to speak the same language. Like, your expressions, lots of nice little things like that. It makes me almost want to like meet somebody that I can't communicate with verbally and almost like try and build a relationship with them. Just through being
human.
Yeah, just through being sound, really.
Yeah.
And just like sharing and caring and
sharing and caring, baby.
And with that, let's listen to a track. This is The Package by A Perfect Circle, written about somebody's package, maybe. And then when we come back, young Bullwinkle's going to tell us about the bloop. The bloop. We have come to the last 14-15 minutes of Pandora's box. So, young Bullwinkle's going to tell us all about the bloop, and then we're gonna whack off.
Oh wait now.
We're gonna reel off quick fire facts. So, young Bullwinkle, will take it away with the bloop.
So, ladies and gents, this is a book that I received for Christmas with different mysteries.
Look at that artwork. Look at that front cover.
That's the guy on the back. Where is he? There. That's the man who wrote it himself.
Dr. Graham.
He looks like he should be friends with my old man.
Dr. Graham Klingbein.
That's it.
Klingenbaum.
The bloop I will tell you about. A strange, unidentified underwater sound heard in 1997 is mentioned very briefly.
Sorry, man.
It had ultra low frequency and was extremely powerful. This sound has become known as the bloop. It was detected by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The sound was heard several times from a remote region of the South Pacific Ocean, west of the tip of South America. The sound did not appear to be man-made or of geological origin.
That's what I was going to say, like a tectonic plate shifting or something.
Apparently it wasn't.
What?
Yeah. One suggestion ascribed it to be an ice quake.
Yep.
The audio profile, however, resembled that of a living creature, but was several times louder than the loudest recorded animal, the blue whale. There has been some speculation as to whether the sound come from some exotic creature, or possibly some extraterrestrial creature.
Yeah, I heard some people try and debunk it and say that the sound was caused by a giant iceberg that had like cracked under like at the bottom of it or something, and that it made a sound which made it sound very similar in its like resonance to a whale's, and that's what caused it. But I mean, I think nobody's going to know ever for sure. I think, as I said, as I was said in Mystery Mondays, which is going to be coming out obviously on Monday. I talk in that a little bit about Occam's razor. Just I guess you got to try and use like what's the most plausible stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean You know, it doesn't necessarily mean that the most plausible thing is always the correct answer. It just usually is. But I mean, yes, it's a mysterious thing. And one thing that's cool about the bloop is that I guess we'll never know 100%.
I like it because it kind of goes hand in hand with what you were talking a little while back on the show. With the thing of there still could be, or there still might be, like 7 sea monsters.
Yeah, they reckon. Yeah, from that
haven't been found.
I can't remember what it was called now. Yeah, but from that there was from that like scientific method.
Yeah,
we can sort of estimate that there's still 7 what you would describe as monsters that we haven't found in the ocean yet. And all monster means is something that's larger than 2 meters long that has not yet been documented by science. So
you know, a blue whale as well, like, makes super loud sound.
Yeah.
What happens if you had like 4 blue whales together that just did it at the same time?
Harmonizing, they were singing. They were just trying to.
Would that make like
what,
a
like a bloop? What, like a?
You know,
what, like some sort of like barbershop quartet?
You know, like just that sound. But do you know what I mean? Like, would it make it more powerful?
Would it amplify it?
Yeah, like say like you've got 100 people like in a choir, and you'd be standing in front of them, and they're all as one sound, really, like, and that's quite powerful. Like, would you get that in the sea as well?
What I imagine with that is, I expect that like marine biologists and stuff are so used to the sound of like whale pods making noises at the same time. I assume that this was so different that it was notable. So if you think about it, most whales do live in pods.
Yeah.
If not all of them. Maybe not all of them,
blue
but
whales.
most of them.
Yeah, blue whales live in pods.
Yeah, all of them, yeah.
What I was going to say as well is, isn't there something that whales, like, when they're near humans, this isn't even really on top of the
they
block,
get quieter.
but they go quieter because they know it would make people deaf because they're so loud.
Yeah.
For blue whales,
like,
next
it would
to you,
literally.
I really like that. I do. I like that fact.
They know that it would literally blow your eardrums out.
Yeah.
You'd go deaf.
So
they would blow your eardrums
nice and
out.
gentle with us.
Yeah, it was sperm whales that I was talking about that with. Sperm whales have been documented that they do things like that. And
aren't they some of the cleverest sperm whales?
I think they are the cleverest of the whales.
Yeah, I remember.
That's just off the top of my head. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are. They seem to have the most like complex brain and stuff like that. And even like some really fascinating things about them. Like if you're in the water as a human and you're like, obviously we would like float horizontally.
Right.
Whereas most things in the ocean float vertically. A sperm whale will go horizontal, almost like so weird, man.
That's
so weird,
cool.
but so cool. So cool. Yeah, whales, gotta love them, really. Gotta love them. Anyway, I thought we'd have that nice little eerie music for the bloop.
I like
it. It is a weird, mysterious thing. You know, it could have been some weird giant. It could have been Cthulhu.
Should we do a little mystery out of here once a week?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll pull up something once a week and get a little mystery.
Bullwinkle's astonishing book of facts. Book of mysterious mysteries. Bullwinkle's mysteries.
Mysterious box from Pandora's box.
Yes.
You know what time it is. It's time for Quickfire Facts. Every week I will bring you some Quickfire Facts.
Quickfire Facts.
Did you know that until almost 45 years ago, tuna was caught for fun and either sent to landfills or ground into pet food because it was deemed so undesirable and almost mocked as a human food? In Japan, tuna was known as neko matagi, which means the fish that even a cat would disdain. Whoa. Nowadays, tuna is the most eaten fish in the whole of the Western world.
It's making a comeback.
Well, man, yeah. I mean,
I'm rooting for it.
Ever since we've been, at least, like, I mean, yeah, I remember walking.
Tuna steaks are insane, man. They're real good.
I even think like, man, I've got a tuna sandwich here right now.
Tuna fish.
I've always been a fan of like tuna baguettes, tuna sandwiches. You know, like tuna, man. Tuna jacket potato, really nice.
Tuna with some mayo and sweet corn and that all mixed up.
Man.
Oh, so good.
Either in a sandwich or in a potato. Yeah, man. Good stuff. But that's just quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It was both. It was almost deemed like laughable as like a.
I wonder why.
I guess they just thought it was like bland and like flavourless.
Yeah.
It's like one of the meatiest fish, isn't it?
I guess to be fair, it's like if you eat it on its own, it's pretty. Yeah. It's not nice. Whereas if you ate like a salmon or a mackerel
doing it on
like
the proper like steak grill, but with you know what I mean, like a big fat tuna steak.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's interesting. This is just almost like a bit of like a weird but funny one. In the 1950s, a psychiatrist gathered 3 paranoid schizophrenic patients who each believed that they were Jesus Christ. He put them in a room together to see if their beliefs would change after being confronted with each other. The experiment was called the 3 Christs of Isolanti, and in the end, each concluded that the other 2 must have mental issues. I think that's like really funny. I think the guy almost like thought that it might cure them all of their weird feeling of being, but they just were like, no, the other two are mental. I'm Jesus. Quite funny, isn't it? It's another factoid for you now. Did you know that Sudan has more pyramids than Egypt? After being destroyed and looted, the ones left are at risk of disappearing due to shifting desert sands. There's a multi-billion-dollar project to plant a line of trees across the entire African continent to create ground stability and stop the desert spread.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
That's cool.
Did you know that by 400 BC, the Persians had developed ancient refrigerators named yakakal? These were high domed buildings that were capable of storing solid ice even in the summer in the desert.
That's so cool.
Persians were dons, man. Persians were dons. The Animal Planet's reality series known as River Monsters had to end because the star of the show, Jeremy Wade, was such a good fisherman that essentially every exceptionally large freshwater species on planet Earth was caught, leaving no remaining possible content for the show.
That's such a good show as well.
Oh, he's such a legend, isn't he?
Have you ever seen that episode where one of the cameramen got like struck by lightning?
Yes, and he did like a little bit as well, but the guy was like taken out in a canoe. They went out fishing and then there was like a storm came and they were in a canoe and they were like paddling back to shore and then one of the guys got struck by lightning. Mental.
Crazy.
Did he die? Or?
No, but he was like needed medical attention, man. This is a weird one. A UK man named David Hampson has repeatedly gotten arrested for standing on a certain road to block traffic. The man never speaks a word, not even to the court or to his lawyer. And every time he is released, he repeats the same crime and remains completely silent. The Earth has got some weird people in it, man. We are a weird species, aren't we? We are a weird.
I like that guy's little mission by himself.
Man,
have you heard? By the way, just on the sort of topic of that, did you hear that someone like tried to smear cake all over the Mona Lisa this week?
No.
Yeah, this week
Why would you do that?
someone went to it's in the Louvre, and they went in and smeared cake, but it was covered obviously like because it's a million trillion pound painting, it was just covered in like glass. So the painting was fine.
Where?
But yeah,
it's good that it's covered in glass. Like, thank the Lord for that.
Yeah.
Some idiots.
Don't know what he was saying. He was trying to save the world apparently after, but got arrested. Obviously,
mate, as I said, we are a weird species, aren't we? This one's really cool. This is like a nice little funny one. There was a British major called Alexis Castagli, which sounds very Italian for a British man. But anyway, he was a prisoner of war and started a hobby of stitching while he was in German captivity. His work was so good that it was hung on the wall by his German guards, not realising that there was a secret message stitched on it in Morse code, which read, "God save the king," and F-U-C-K Hitler. That's a really good one, isn't it? Long live British Major Alexis Castagli. You are a friend of the pod. You're a friend of the pod. This one's quite cool. A philosophical riddle from 1688 was recently solved. It goes, if a man born blind can feel the differences between shapes such as spheres and cubes, could he, if given the ability, distinguish those objects by sight alone? In 2003, 5 people had their sight restored through surgery, and no, they could not do it. That's quite interesting, isn't it?
So they could not do what?
They couldn't distinguish a shape from seeing it, even though they'd spent their prior life as a blind person feeling it. So it just goes to show that to us who put the 2 and 2 together, because usually when we're feeling something, we look at it, it would seem obvious that if you're feeling something that's square or cube, it would look like a cube. Whereas to people that have spent their lives blind and then are cured through breakthrough treatments,
they could say a circle is a cube by looking at it.
They obviously know what a cube was from feeling it, but then they were shown one, they didn't know what the shape was.
Do blind people dream?
Yes.
Do they see in their dreams?
I think that'd be almost. I think they must dream. Yeah, they must dream. They're still humans, but God knows.
I wonder what they see.
Well, I think one thing to bear in mind: most people that are blind aren't actually fully blind. Did you know that?
Right.
Like the majority of people that are blind aren't. It's not like black. They they just are extremely visually impaired. So most blind people can make out vague colours and things like that. So they would have some sort of imprint, but it would just be such poor vision that they are essentially blind. Yeah.
Right.
Some see visual images but not robust scenes, and some see full visual scenes while they dream, like sighted people do. So it's a bit depends, I think, and it depends if you were born completely blind or if you'd seen in the past,
right, right,
and had memories of.
Yeah.
This is quite like a brutal, but also like a baller thing to do. This next fact: Nike wanted to call their first shoe design the Nike Aztec, but Adidas, who was already an established brand, threatened to sue them since they already had a line out called Aztec Golds. The Nike co-founders then decided to change the name of their first ever shoe to Cortez, after the Spanish general that destroyed all of the Aztecs. That's pretty baller, isn't it? Like, you can have Aztecs, I'm just going to call ours the Cortez, mate. Cortez just killed all the free. Yeah, that's a bit of a baller move, isn't it? That's a bit of a baller move. Right. Some species of bamboo flower only once in decades. Some species of bamboo flower only once in decades, and do so simultaneously across the entire planet, regardless of location or climate. This happens every 40 to 80 years, and it is seen as a curse in East Asia because it is immediately followed by rat infestation and spread of famine.
Wait, what? What do they do?
Flower once every 40
bamboo plants
40 to 80 years.
Only flower once every 40 to 80 years, and do so simultaneously across the globe, regardless of location or climate.
That is mental.
I had this weird plant in my house that's got really long leaves, and I thought that's all it is. And then the other day, this like shoot just came like right out the top of it, like really long, went all sticky and weird, and then like that flowered and all these pods of flowers on it. And I've had it for years. I've had it literally for about 5 years.
And it's just flowered for the first time.
And it's only flowered for the first time, and it's just done that. It was just
I'll
like
tell you
random.
one thing.
And he lasted a few days as well. They're all gone now as well.
Similar stuff happens in my garden, man. You'd think every single spring the same thing happens, right? But every year, certain things like flower that don't flower the year before. Certain plants just start growing that don't normally grow. Certain bushes just seem to suddenly just spring to life, and it's like don't get me wrong. Obviously, every year there's certain things that you can guarantee, like the daisies will start springing up, daffodils. Things like that. But there's certain plants which just seem some years they'll just pop up and some other years they don't.
Yeah,
it's like this
crazy, isn't it?
This year, you know what sticky willies are? Not what you think.
Are they the little things that stick? Well,
they stick. They're like a weed, and they stick to everything.
I know the
it's
ones.
real annoying. Yeah.
So this year, for some reason, that's just like growing like wildfire. I've never had that problem before. Never ever had that problem before. But I'm like ripping them out everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm getting rid of them left, right, and centre because they are like enveloping my garden.
I remember like Cannington Park as well. I remember one year like just going up there, and it was like proper inundated with like those massive thistles with the big purple tops when they have a big purple tower on top. But literally, you couldn't even walk up to the Cannington Park because it was so thick with it all around. And I've never seen it again like that.
Weird,
summer, just one summer was like that.
So strange, man. So strange. Anyway, guys, unfortunately, we've come to the end of another session here this week in Pandora's Box. Thanks for chilling with us all, everybody. We love every single one of you. I've been Obadiah Pennywhistle.
We love you.
He's been Drooper at the Bear. He's been Young
Marmaduke Johnson.
Marmaduke Johnson, the man with the golden nuggets. Tune in next week for more awesome facts. Until then, have a great week, everybody. We love you.
We love you.
Cheers.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.